I don't even think we realized at the time when we started using our Sculpt Neo machine to build muscle. This was before we knew about how much muscle people were losing with the GLPs. But we knew how important muscle was, right, for longevity. And, we had been talking to our patients about the fact that, what the mortality rate is of a fracture and, in your 70s or 80s, the mortality rate is like 83% from a hip fracture.
Welcome to MyMD Unscripted, where healthcare gets personal and the script gets tossed. I'm Dr. Clint Carter, ER doctor turned direct primary care freedom fighter, on a mission to challenge how our healthcare system treats patients in America. In every episode, my expert guests and I dive into real conversations about what's broken and how we can fix it by making healthcare about people, not just managing disease. It's time to rethink what healthcare should be and how we can make it better together. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to MyMD Select Unscripted, where we talk about all the things you wish you could talk about with your doctor, but he doesn't have time and may not know the answers. So today I have the privilege of a special guest. She is brilliant and beautiful. She's also my wife. This is Stephanie Carter, a physician assistant here at MyMD Select in Tyler, Texas. And the topic is weight loss. And we sure do get a lot of questions about what is this foreign poison that everyone's putting in their bodies to lose weight? And we're going to break down the answer to all of that. But first, Steph, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us how we got to this point?
Hi. I noticed you did have a little hesitation and privilege of inviting me on your show. So
it's just hard to put into words how privileged I really am.
So I'm Stephanie Carter. I'm a PA. I graduated from PA school while Clint was in medical school in Houston. I'm a graduate of UTMB Galveston. We got married and got back from our honeymoon the day before I started PA school. So basically, we've been doing medicine together since the beginning. We started our practice together almost 9 years ago, doing primary care together. And I always tell people that if anyone would have asked me if my husband would be either my supervising physician or business partner, I would have laughed in their face. But you know what? It's been a great few years, and we look forward to lots of years to go. So it's fun teamwork.
God has a sense of humor, I think. And you have the patience of a saint. I think that's clear to everyone in the few minutes we've already been on the podcast. So tell me so lately we've had a lot of questions about weight loss. Of course, there's so much going on with Semaglutide and Tirzepatide and compounded versus branded. And how many of our patients come in saying, why can't you just eat less and move more and get the weight loss that you want instead of putting this poison in your body? So what is semaglutide and what's the deal?
It does a lot of really amazing things. And I think to answer your first question about how many people come in and say, why can't I just diet and exercise and, not have to put this poison in my body? I feel like more people say, I've been dieting and exercising for years. It doesn't matter what I do. Either I can't reach my health goals or I've reached them and then I can't maintain them. But either way, whether they've never reached them or not, they don't want some kind of cheap trick, right? They feel like in the past, everything we've ever had to offer people for weight loss was dangerous, right? And so they're I think it's good that they have some hesitation, right? But then when you start telling them that this mimics something that our body already does, really amplifies what our body, some people probably do it very well, but not everybody.
Well, I think the American diet is pretty hardcore on our ability so semaglutide's a protein that our body makes anyway. It's God's plan for us to be full and metabolize. And ultimately, the sort of standard American diet, which spells sad, has tricked our bodies into never being full and until our stomachs are literally stretched. That's really where semaglutide comes into play here, because like you said, everything else has been dangerous up to this point. And so it's not really a foreign body. The question of whether it's healthy for you may still exist. If someone's on semaglutide, and we'll probably get more into sort of the process and what's going on, but if someone gets on semaglutide, does that mean that their body doesn't work anymore without it, or what does that mean?
I feel like so many people can do well on it initially for a long time, reach their health goals, and then maintain them without it. I know the studies show, specifically for diabetics, that they have to stay on it long term to maintain their A1C levels. But I've seen people who really just had the weight to lose, that weren't diabetics, do well without it, or that they're able to maintain even on a very low dose, like a microdose, after achieving their goals.
Yeah, well, and we'll kind of get into how we do it at MyMD Select and how maybe that's different than many of the places that are just kind of passing it out on the street corner. Because I mean, let's be frank, it is everywhere, and so many people are on it, and so many of the people that I run into that aren't our patients are like, yeah, I mean, I'm nauseated all the time, and I feel like crud, and I hardly ever eat, but I'm losing weight, and so that's good. And I'm like, is it? Is it though? Is that good? So what about for those that are losing weight on semaglutide? Well, let's start with our patients. How do you approach it? Because we actually might do it slightly differently. How do you approach it with semaglutide in your patients?
Well, we always talk about the multifaceted approach, right? This is not, it's part of a lifestyle, right? And I don't want to give it to you for you to just, sit on the couch and waste away. Partly because we've learned a lot about how, up to 40% of the weight loss can be muscle, right? So we start out by talking, okay, you've got to be exercise, you got to be moving, you got to be building your muscle, doing weight resistance and cardiovascular exercise, and then eating a healthy diet, right? Because like we talked about, one of the ways it works is by affecting our hunger center and decreasing the movement of food through the GI tract, so we get full faster, we stay full longer. So that means when we do eat, we have to eat a nutrient dense diet, so we aren't starving ourselves, right? So we're making sure that we're hydrated, we're exercising, we are giving our body nutrients, and then letting that other mechanism work, which we can get into, I guess, which is help telling our body to stop making its own glucose, which is, I think, is the real magic, and use our fat stores, right? So it's this perfect picture of health, really, if you do it in the right way. So
And
I just try to set.
I love how it affects the metabolism as well. It causes your insulin. I mean, the reason it was a diabetic medicine was, number one, you make less glucose, but also it causes your insulin to be released more rapidly, more efficiently, faster, and then you're after a meal, and then the glucose level in your bloodstream goes down much faster, and then it helps your insulin stay lower in between meals so that you can be in metabolic burn mode, losing weight, having energy, feeling good, instead of storage mode. So much of our normal diet puts us in all day long with these high glycemic foods and relatively long lasting high sugars that cause you to release more and more insulin, which cause insulin resistance. Keeping your insulin levels low decreases insulin resistance. So you got to get your sugar down for your insulin to go down. And once your insulin goes down, then your insulin receptors can become less and less resistant, and people lose weight easier and easier and easier, to the point that at some point when they're close to their goal weight, we start backing way off on the dose, backing way off on the frequency of the doses. So to me, it's like, I got some people like, well, I'm pretty hard headed, I just won't eat. Like, yeah, that's not really how this works. And then, like you said, what are some of the ways we can mitigate against it? Because one of the main side is, let's say that you're a patient of ours. We're not going to let you just be nauseated all the time. That's not how it works. We're not going to let you be exhausted and miserable all the time. We're going to use half doses, quarter doses, dose it twice a week, get you there very slowly, make it a more natural transition process, and therefore keeping your doses lower, which is nice. But we can't necessarily avoid the muscle loss if people start losing weight pretty quickly. So how else do we try to mitigate that?
Yes, I don't even think we realized at the time when we started using our Sculpt Neo machine to build muscle. This was before we knew about how much muscle people were losing with the GLPs, but we knew how important muscle was, right, for longevity. And we'd been talking to our patients about the fact that what the mortality rate is of a fracture, and in your 70s or 80s, the fatality rate's like 83% from a hip fracture. Strengthening the muscle, right? Weight resistance training and supporting your core and improving your balance and all those things. So that was a really great addition to our practice.
Yeah, having a machine that can, a device, I guess, that can build muscle in a way that you can't build it, as well as burn some fat in some places your body just really doesn't want to get rid of it. And then tighten the skin around it for all these folks that have the extra, loose skin from all the weight loss and waiting to the very end to address it. But also, it doesn't replace working out. You have to work out. You're just doing one muscle group at a time with the device, usually a core muscle group somewhere. But also, we strongly recommend, and when appropriate, hormone replacement. So if your testosterone, especially testosterone, but testosterone and estrogen in females are being replaced properly, and you're doing resistance training, that weight loss from muscle can be dramatically minimized. If you lose enough weight, you're going to lose a little muscle, but we can help put it back on because hormonally, you're 30, not 60. We can help put you where you should be for longevity, quality of life, anti-inflammatory, all the things that proper hormone replacement does for you. And then we can help build those areas. We can address those difficult to address areas with the device when appropriate.
Yeah.
What about, everyone wants to know what diet is right. So what diet do you put every person on?
Everyone's different.
Everyone's different, man. Personalized medicine all the way. I mean, one of the things we love about direct primary care is you spend an hour with every patient for every wellness and follow-up visit. You get to dig real deep into what has worked, what hasn't worked, where their barriers are, what their lifestyle is, what's pretty good guess at what's going to work and what's not. Do you have any general, before digging into all that, do you have some sort of basic outlines you use for your patients, or how do you do that?
I think we've always, or at least for the last many, many years, talked about a low glycemic index diet, right? Or starting out low carb, right? Like not super, super low, but an intermittent fasting is kind of like the mainstays, right? And then as they learn that and memorize that, they can start understanding about different glycemic indexes. And with semaglutide, I try to be a little bit careful. I don't want them going too low carb. I think it's more nutritive and clean, right? And then we do food sensitivity panels, right? For people that have inflammatory illnesses and kind of find out like what's causing inflammation in their body, cut those out. It's another fun approach to the whole diet thing. But for pure weight loss, I guess you also have to make sure they're getting plenty of protein.
Correct, yeah.
And proper hydration, right? Constipation is a side effect of semaglutide, but so we're learning more about that, right? Like proper electrolytes, trace minerals. There's just so much to learn.
Yeah, and so many of our patients come in with, they've been listening to that podcast or that podcast, and the secret to weight loss. And it's, I've had some people find out the hard way that like, oh, that extreme diet is actually fairly inflammatory for me, right? Like, I think I love to eat bacon all day, but as it turns out, that makes me feel bad. Whereas a different patient can go carnivore or whatever. And, I had a patient today who's 40 pounds down on carnivore, not doing semaglutide. Cholesterol was a little high. We'll get a calcium score, see what that looks like. But really, he's already on a little bit of a statin. That was his choice. So we just increased it a little to match his dietary, but he feels so good. So it's not, and then his inflammatory labs were low and all his labs were looking better other than the cholesterol. So it was like, clearly this is not an inflammatory diet for you. It works. But there's some that it would be, the opposite, and they would feel bad. And there's, I'm not a huge vegan sort of, I feel like animal protein has its place in our, bodies scientifically. But in the meantime, if you go vegan and that's what, makes you feel better and less inflamed, you just have to really focus on your protein. Protein is key. You can't build muscle. You can't maintain muscle. You don't stay full. Your metabolism suffers. Your insulin is high if you're not getting enough protein. And you don't supplement more fat. You supplement more carbs. So really, that's really one of the only diets that I'm just not huge on, but not to say it's personalized medicine. If it works for you, I'll work with you and help you get there. Kind of wrap it up. I think the take home here for us is there's so much misinformation and so many people making money on doing this incorrectly. Either follow this simple diet and you'll lose 100 pounds, or here's your prescription of semaglutide, good luck. And so I think the take home here is that it's a personalized approach. Semaglutide, tirzepatide, those guys, we can get them compounded for now, which we really prefer because we like the quality that it comes in, and we can microdose. Whereas on the pens for the branded guys, you got to have it, you pick a dose for the month, and they only come in certain doses, and, there's no half steps. So I really like the compounded stuff. There's question of availability coming up. There's some question of how the new regime is going to handle that. But in the meantime, there was usually going to be a way, even if we have to get it at a discounted price from the manufacturers to make it work. But when you pair it properly with proper diet, lots of protein, get some resistance training. Cardio is not bad, but you got to get some resistance training. Get plenty of fluids, the other electrolytes. It's a good time to be alive, because until now it was always stimulants and, crash diets and tapeworms, right? Like nothing's been a very good idea since the 80s.
And that's what I wanted to touch on too, that safety, not just how safe it is, but the cardiovascular event reduction in the trials. And then so much research going into just that anti-inflammatory effect in MS patients and so forth. I just think it's going to be so fun to see, in the next 5 years, even what we're doing with this because of its anti-inflammatory effects.
Yeah, it's anti-autoimmune. I mean, I don't know if it's because our diet is so, pisses off our immune system so much, and we're able to simplify the diet and try to get clean and not be starving all the time, or if it, it's so, like in the studies for the cardiovascular benefit, it was beside the fact, because we're talking about diabetics in these studies, so it's beside the fact that it lowered their A1C and lowered their sugars and lowered the weight. Independent of all of that, their hearts were safer. They had less cardiac events on it than off it. So it's going to be fun to see. The future of weight loss is interesting. Getting into the peptide world where we use proteins that were God's idea and were designed a certain way, and then we just, by the miracle of modern food technology, have filled our bodies with chemicals and preservatives and additives instead of food. It's just going to be fun to see what comes next down the pipe. I think it's a fun time to be alive. We've had a few generations now of the American diet really causing a lot of disease and morbidity and mortality. So I'm excited to be a part of the longevity and, health, quality of life now movement.
And don't you think also just depression? I think it's been a little demoralizing for people to have been told oversimplified instructions on how to be healthier and just reduce your calories, and that it's been pretty. It makes people lose heart, and so. It really is. It's fun time you just see the spark return to people's eyes. Like, okay, this really could work, and it's safe, and I could feel better and get up. I could play with my grandkids. I could play with my kids again. And because my joints won't hurt so much when I get some weight off, those like just the reality of the situation of people feeling encouraged and better
and healthier for it. Now, at some point, it'd be nice to not be on it. It'd be nice. But there's some people that probably will always want a half dose every 2 to 3 weeks as they find themselves randomly in the pantry at 10 o'clock at night looking for carbohydrates, right? Like that's something that it has its place as a, low dose maintenance. And there's some people that after being on it for 6, 12 plus months, losing tens, if not, more pounds of weight, that they've just retrained their body on how they do what they do. But there is no such thing as getting to a goal weight and then going back to your old habits and maintaining your weight. I mean, you can use these medications to maintain your weight, I guess, and try to go back to your old habits, but it won't work. Your old habits don't fit in with this lifestyle. So it's pretty exciting, the possibilities coming forward.
Yes, and using, the continuous glucose monitors, that is so, people love it. They can actually see, we like to give it to them like before they start semaglutide, and they can watch, how their levels change with different carbs, mixed with proteins and whatnot, and then see how it changes on semaglutide. I mean, it's powerful, even whether or not they start at GLP, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just that knowledge of seeing what their sugar actually does. That's a really
So
fun
many,
tool.
so many of my patients are like, well, beer made my glucose go really high, but bourbon didn't. I was like, oh, well, just be careful. It's got other side effects. But, finding out that was surprisingly high. I know the first time I wore it and I had coffee with some cream and probably a little sugar in the creamer. I was like, whoa, I haven't even got to work yet. And it's 140. I'm a diabetic. I'm a diabetic. I was just sure of it. Of course I'm not. It came right back down and all of that. The numbers look great. The averages are great. The A1C is great, but it's like, wow, what do I need to do to make it not do that? How do I adjust what I'm doing so that I'm not fighting these spikes? Well, okay, let's wrap it up. If you had to pick, which one of us is better at following our own health advice?
Well, I'm probably going to say you. Yeah.
Nice. I knew I invited you on this podcast for a reason. I think it just comes down to being stubborn and old and a lack of joy. So it's easier when you have when you're just an old, joyless, old bald guy to stick to some of these things.
I do tell people all the time, if you're going to start on whatever this journey is, health journey, do it with your spouse, because do it with your partner, because you're going to be a lot more successful. So probably it's a balance between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. If the rest of the family was eating the other way, it would, be terrible. And the other piece that I would add before we leave is that doing a body composition analysis, at the beginning and along the way to support what's my muscle mass doing, what's my fat percentage doing, because eventually the scale is just not detailed enough. If you're losing 40% muscle and you're happy that you're losing weight, you're just missing the picture. So some body composition, we use a Staiku. There's other brands out there, just to let you know all of that part. So I would definitely encourage people to, whether you're on semaglutide or not, whether you're on a weight loss journey, let's make sure that you are aware of how you're doing to make sure that what you're doing is right. So other than that, guys, thank you so much for listening. We hope that clears up some of it. The story on semaglutide and tirzepatide has, it's barely been started. There are many chapters yet to be written, but so far, as a physician and as a team here at MyMD Select, we've been very happy with how having this tool has helped us to take care of our patients, help them meet their goals, help us meet our goals, quite frankly. Our staff looks amazing. To be able to be more personalized. I mean, this is technically a direct primary care based podcast, and it's really that non-insurance world that we're in that allows us the freedom to sort of play in this sandbox where patients need the help, but insurance doesn't want any part of it, whether it be hormone replacement, weight loss, body composition, longevity, preventative medicine. That's just stuff that you have to have takes time, and you need to be in a business model outside of the insurance system in order to make it work. So we're thrilled that we're getting more and more tools in our toolbox. It makes being a doctor and a physician assistant much more fun. So if you're in the area, look us up. We're in Tyler, Texas. Otherwise, you can check us out at MyMDSelectTyler.com and just send your questions in and let us know where we were wrong. And in the meantime, don't forget to follow us. And it's okay to rate us. We're big boys and girls. We understand we're starting out this thing. This is early in the podcast voyage, but thanks for following along. And we'll catch you guys on the flip side. Steph, anything else?
I think you covered it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks for joining me today on MyMD Unscripted. I hope today's conversation opened your mind and inspired you to imagine a better path for your health and therefore life. If you found value in this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone passionate about transforming healthcare. Real change starts with real conversations, so let's keep them going. Until next time, stay well, stay curious, and never stop pushing for better.